Welcome to the FamilyLife Blended Podcast. I'm Ron Deal. We help blended families and those who love them pursue the relationships that matter most. In case you didn't know, in blended families, there's an intersection called Parenting Street and Marriage Avenue. And there are a lot of T-bone accidents that happen right there. And man, are they messy. We're going to be talking about the intersection of parenting and marriage. That's our topic on this episode of FamilyLife Blended. Stepfamily author and speaker Gayla Grace is my guest again.
Hey, Ron.
Always good to have you here.
Good to be here.
In about a month, you and I are going to be speaking. We're part of the team of people speaking at our summit on Stepfamily Ministry in Dallas.
Yes.
October 10 and 11. What do you like about that event?
About the summit? I like the fact that you have ministry leaders who come together and you can really be able to rub shoulders with people who are doing this same type of thing, trying to educate blended families, trying to help them and encourage them.
It's good stuff. And we do. We bring in voices from around the country, different people who have great things to share. The networking is
key.
Is so key and important. There are so few of us, relatively speaking, doing blended family ministry. If we can get together and encourage each other, it's really good.
Because it's very needed, and it's not going to go away.
That's right.
But it can get discouraging depending on how churches react to what you're trying to do.
Hey, we know we are leading a movement here. And as you said, the population is just going to continue to rise, and not just in Northern America, but around the world.
Yes. And then we continue to learn of other places around the world that aren't doing anything about it.
All right. So there are opportunities all over the place, and we'd love for you to come and be a part of that. If not you, somebody from your church, tell them about it. Encourage them to come and be a part of it. Our theme this year is Great Expectations, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because great unrealistic expectations create problems.
They do.
And so we're going to be talking about what those common unrealistic expectations are, and what is realistic and how you can help people get on the right page as they go forward. Okay, let's jump into our subject today. Gayla, blended family couples are particularly susceptible to parenting disagreements.
They are.
Why do you think that is?
Because you're bringing two families together. And maybe both of you have kids, maybe you don't. But even if just one of you comes in with kids, then you got a step-parent relationship that's hard. You're protective of your kids if you're the biological parent. And so it just sets you up to have parenting struggles.
Yep, it does. And then there's that us versus them thing. Right? So you and your parenting and they and their parenting, if you both bring in kids and, all those little combinations just easily add up to division.
Yeah, or you parenting their child and it doesn't go the way you want it to. Yeah, all of that. Okay,
so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some common step-parenting and parenting dynamics that end up causing marital difficulties. At the end of the day, this episode is about protecting your marriage. It's about helping you to be a team so that you can work together and cooperate. So we've outlined a number of those little traps.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one.
Okay.
When the biological parent gets paralyzed. Ooh, this is a pretty common dynamic, I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, you become protective of your kids, and so then you don't do the thing of disciplining, and then the step-parent steps in, and that's not a good combination.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, it occurs to me to say to our audience, listening or watching, some of these you've heard us talk about before on this podcast, either with other guests or Gayla and I, but we're putting them all together in one spot for you on this episode so that you can share that with somebody else, maybe a spouse, for example, or at least it's a one-stop shop place to go and get it. So being paralyzed, what's at the heart of that? Like, I think guilt for some people. Fear. Let's unpack both of those. Guilt would be, gosh, my kids have been through a lot.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's, I did something in my first marriage that led to a lot of pain for my children, and it's made life difficult for them, and I can't get away from my own guilt of what I did. Sometimes it's just the general guilt of life has not brought them and you good things.
Right.
And so you weren't necessarily personally responsible for causing the end of your first marriage, for example, but you still sort of feel responsible in just some general way.
We never want our kids to go through hard things. And they've gone through something hard if you've ended up in a remarriage. There's something that's happened back here.
That's right. And you just feel bad about it. And so that guilt ends up paralyzing you today because you think, well, they've been through enough.
Right. I'm just going to slide on this whole parenting thing.
I'll let them decide what time they go to bed rather than tell them what time they're going to go to bed.
Right.
Right. So that's the guilt thing. What about the fear?
I think you're just fearful of what is this parenting thing going to look like as you try to parent with someone who's a step parent to them. And are they going to do it the same way? How's the child going to react to it?
Yeah. I just thought of another one. People who have another home. Not everybody does, but most do.
Yes.
Children are going to the other home, and there's fear about what they're being taught, or what's the character example that's being set for them over there.
Or if I'm the bad guy here, are they just going to go live over there?
Yeah, okay. So losing contact and connection with your kids.
Right.
So the influence of the other home, and so I feel like I have to parent opposite of what the other home is doing, and that sort of paralyzes my ability to take initiative and do things here.
And then there's an ex-spouse in this other home, and so how are they going to react to it, and are they going to give us pushback and just create more stress on the kids?
Yep. These are all little tough things, and the reason we're putting words on them for you, the listener or the viewer, is you just need to know this about yourself so that you can say, that's what it is. Because this is where you then have agency. You get to make a choice about what you're going to do about that guilt or that fear. And you're going to decide whether you let that dominate your parenting or not. I think, I know the temptation is still there, even though you know what it is. But if you can't put words on it, you don't even realize how much it's paralyzing you.
Right. And I think for me, I always try to look at the long-term effect. Is this going to serve my child well in the long run? It's not if you're becoming paralyzed in your parenting.
So good. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, this is for step-parents who are listening. Acting like you're trying to, what I call, erase and replace the other biological parent. So let's say you're a stepfather, and kids have a biological dad, and you sort of jump in there and say, I'm the new sheriff in town. This is the way it's going to work.
You're going to call me dad.
You're going to call me dad. All of those high demand sort of things. And essentially you're acting like you are erasing and replacing their biological father. What that does is it sends a very strong message to the children. Couple of messages. These are important. Hear this. You may not intend to send this, but you are saying to them, I'm better than your dad. Your relationship with your dad is intimidating to me and therefore a threat to me, and therefore I'm going to try and diminish your relationship to your father. Wow. Just think about that for a minute. Imagine just actually saying to one of your stepchildren, your relationship with your dad is really unimportant, and you should not be loyal to him and listen to him. I should be the guy in your life who takes that spot in your heart. Can you just imagine saying that out loud?
No. And the alarms that will go up with that stepchild?
Exactly. That kid's going to look at you as unsafe, untrustworthy. Right. You are now a threat to me and my relationship with my dad. And so guess who gets erased and replaced?
Yeah, the step-parent.
You do, right? So this totally backfires. And that's just the child's reaction. Imagine your spouse's reaction when they sort of pick up on all of this.
Oh, right.
Right? So then they're against you too. Now you got a marital problem.
Right.
None of this is helpful, right? So you can't say that, and you certainly can't say erase and replace to the biological dad directly, whether to the child or to the bio dad. That is not your place. And the good news is you don't have to erase anybody.
No.
The one thing we like around here about the word bonus, and just this week I heard somebody in Denmark use the word extra. You're an extra parent. That sort of works for them there. The idea of that is really great, because if I have to erase you, there's only one spot where I can stand or you can stand, and one of us has got to go. Well, no, that's not right. Bonus or extra says there are multiple spots.
Right, and there's room for all of us here.
Dad's going to stand in his spot and be dad as it should be. I'm going to come along and stand in my own place, be my own person, have my own influence, and find my own relationship with you, child, and we're going to be okay, separate and apart from whatever's going on with your relationship with your dad.
Right, but what about when the biological dad does feel threatened by the step-parent? And we talk sometimes about this no-threat message that we might need to send to the biological parent.
Yeah, you mind unpacking that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we actually did this with my husband and my former husband because he was feeling very threatened by Randy in regards to his relationship with my girls. And we just had a meeting with him, and Randy just said, listen, I want to be an additional person that loves and encourages and is there for these girls. I'm not trying to replace you. And it was very helpful.
We have got a video that kind of unpacks the no threat message and how you can lay it out and say it and what form it will take. And we're going to get that up on YouTube. So we'd love for you to look that up. And I think it'll be really helpful.
Yeah. And, that doesn't have to be done in person. You can even just do it through an email or something if it feels better. But just sending the message that I'm not trying to replace you as the bio parent.
One more story about this, because you just sparked a memory. We had a woman contact us one time who said, I read about the no threat message. She was reading the Smart Stepmom book, and she'd seen it in there. And she said, I knew that my relationship with my husband's ex-wife was so poor that I couldn't communicate the no threat message directly, not even through an email. Wow.
Wow.
So it was like, obviously, there's a lot of water under that bridge.
Yeah.
And so she said, I just resolved in my heart to send the no threat message to my husband's ex through her children.
Oh.
I said kind things about her to her children when they were at our home. I told positive stories, and I asked about her and their relationship with her, and I celebrated their relationship with her. And she said, my hope was her kids would leave my house and go to her house and sort of somehow convey those messages.
Wow.
4 years later, she sends me a picture of her and this other woman, her husband's ex, what we call her ex-wife-in-law, and they're standing side by side. She said, we have a very cordial relationship today. When she brings the kids over, she usually comes in and we visit for a little bit, and here she's drinking tea and we're having a conversation. And when I go and pick them up, we usually say, how you doing? And we meet at the soccer field, and it's very cordial, very get along. And she said, as a matter of fact, you'll see in this picture, this woman's holding a child, an infant. She said, that's my baby. We just had a baby,
Oh my goodness.
my husband and I, and she's holding my baby. I trust her that much. What a transformation. But it's because she resolved to not be a threat.
Well, and it started with her heart. So what's in her heart spilled over, and it was contagious all around. Yeah,
And
that's beautiful.
it just goes to show you can communicate
Right.
the right message or the wrong message
Oh, yes,
through
you
the
can.
children, even
Yes.
without words.
Right. That's great.
Let's do another one.
Unilaterally trying to right the wrongs in a child's life with bio parents parenting or the parent-child relationship. And you give an example here, and I've heard Laura talk about this. Laura Petherbridge,
Yes.
co-authored the Smart Stepmom. She really had issue with the diet of her stepsons and was determined she was going to fix it. And it backfired in a huge way.
Wow. Yeah, you can make enemies real fast, I think,
Yes.
is the message there. It comes from a good heart. So many people want to do something that's helpful for the children.
Right.
But the key word here is unilateral. It's not that you see something and you want to try to speak into it. Again, that you should be cautious about even in the beginning of your blended
I
family
agree.
journey.
Right,
Try
I
to go
agree.
through your spouse, their biological parent, rather than directly to the children. But unilateral means you haven't even talked to your spouse. You're just making a decision.
And it's not your child.
I'm changing the food you eat, whether you like it or not, and whether, husband, you care about it or not. That was, Laura's situation. That's just really, really dangerous. And even though you have good intentions, it probably will backfire on you because people don't always understand your intentions. They don't know you well enough to trust you that much. And it just feels like you're invading their territory.
So you have to at least start by talking to your spouse about it, the parent of those children. That's the starting place. And then if they're saying no go, then you don't.
Yeah, then you don't. Okay, I'm backing up one. Here's another one. The biological parent is easily defensive or dismissive of the step-parent's observations or suggestions.
Yeah, that is so dangerous because you know what I found is Randy had an objective opinion about my girls that sometimes I couldn't see because I was entangled emotionally in a way that he wasn't. And so he could see some things. And if I was just defensive about it all the time, then I wasn't going to want to change what he was saying needed to change. And he really brought some things to the table that I needed to recognize.
Let's unpack that because I think the hard part about this is, wow, something just went off in me. You're saying my children, my girls, in your case, something wrong with them? and you're sort of saying I've been a bad parent or there would be something wrong with them.
Right.
So it feels like a double little whammy here. And that's the defensive part.
Right. But if it comes from a place of love and they tell you that to start, then that's what makes a difference. So when he presented it, it would be, Gayla, you know I love your girls. You know I want what is best for your girls. But here's some things that I'm seeing that I think we need to talk about.
Okay. Yeah. So you got to slow down the defensiveness. You got to open up and try to be more objective. Everything is a both and. Well, not everything, but a lot of things in life and marriage and relationships are a both and. So you have to kind of hold your defensiveness, but it really is helpful if Randy, in that case, is speaking softly and gently, not harsh, not full of criticism or contempt.
And not right after there's been some huge incident with the kids either.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah, if there's already sort of a hypersensitivity.
Right, like there's been misbehavior on the kid's part, and so you're already kind of sensitive to it.
This is not the moment.
No, it's not. No.
Give it a little while. Then revisit. Yeah, but that tone and just how you approach and bring up the whole subject is really so important. I mean, just to sort of illustrate that, it can be as simple as, I have made a couple of observations, and I'm just wondering if we could talk around a couple of things. And then I always tell people, make sure your heart gets communicated.
Right.
My desire is to help your girls.
Right.
I really want to see them learn more responsibility or what something, and I want to be a blessing to them. So I'm just wondering if we can talk about this. That gets the positive intent out on the table, rather than oh man, we got some problems in this house we got to deal with. That's harsh.
And it's not to say that we did it all perfectly in the beginning, because we didn't. And sometimes he did start harsher. I did get defensive, but we learned from it, and eventually I could hear what he was trying to tell me. And the truth is, my oldest daughter has struggled with anxiety, and that's what he was seeing. Well, I was blaming it on the new marriage, the divorce. She just can't cope. But there was a deeper issue there that needed to be addressed.
So it turned out to be a good thing.
It did, because we got her into counseling, and she really thrived when she got the help that she needed.
Yeah. To that end, let's just say step-parents do have something to offer.
They do.
You know, sometimes that outsider can just pinpoint something or see it, and because as you said, they're not so wrapped up in it like you are. And so, yes, there's something here. It doesn't mean, okay, step-parents, calm down. It doesn't mean you're right all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we do know our kids.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But there's something there. What if you disagree? Let's say another occasion, Randy brought something to you, and you're holding your defensiveness, you're listening objectively, you hear it out, and you just at the end of it don't agree.
I think that needs to be expressed, because the truth is, my girls are my girls. They are different than his kids.
Yes.
And so he's used to kids behaving a certain way, and they don't always behave the same way that you think they should.
So there it is. It's a both and. Everybody's going to have something to share, and on any given occasion, you might be spot on and you might not be. It's a conversation.
Right.
You as parent and step-parent have to talk, listen, negotiate, try to figure out what you're going to do, and pursue oneness and unity as you then walk out whatever decisions you make.
Right, and neither one of you insists that you're right. Listen to both sides and then decide.
It's good. Number 5.
Letting your co-parent, a former spouse, dictate your home schedule and autonomy more than your spouse. This is so dangerous in marriage, because this is going to create so much conflict in marriage. If one feels that all you're doing is letting that ex-spouse over there dictate everything that goes on in our life.
Yeah. I've had a lot of conversations with couples where the step-parent speaks up and says, wow, I suggest something and maybe, or we go round and round, or I don't know if it'll ever happen, but the other, his ex calls and he hops to it. Yeah. He's trying to keep peace, and for whatever the motivation is, not necessarily a romantic motivation, but just to keep the peace motivation means the other household has more say on your schedule, your life, your finances, whatever. And that just feels like they're more important than you.
Well, and the reality is, especially in the case of a dad who has a mom in the other home, she carries a lot of power. The biological mom carries a lot of power. And the dad knows that.
Yeah.
And so he caters a lot of times.
Yeah, and it really is a bind, I think.
It is. It can be.
There has to be this understanding. So, again, between the married couple, a lot of conversation needs to take place so that the step-parent gets what the fears and concerns are of the biological parent as it relates to the co-parent.
Right.
That doesn't excuse you never saying no, right? There's
Exactly, I agree.
still need to be boundaries, and even if you're going to say yes to an ex-spouse around a schedule change, for example, you need to check first with your spouse.
Right.
Go to that marriage, confirm, check in, want you to know this is not about me, caring for her. This is about my kids and the schedule, and I feel like we're going to have to make this change, and it is such a pain, and I'm so sorry. I just want to let you know what this is and what it is not. That sort of stuff matters.
It does. And you know what I've heard, Ron, is I've heard people say, if they had just talked to me about it, I would have been okay with it.
Yeah.
But instead, they just made the decision and I was disregarded.
Yeah.
That's what's hurtful.
Yes. And sometimes, do you think some of that is just habit? Like, I was a single dad for whatever years, and I'm just so used to dealing with, making decisions.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it for some people. Sometimes, though, I think there's this, I just don't want to go to the hassle of having to make another phone call before.
Yeah. Just need to make the decision on the fly and be done with this. I got too much else going on.
Yeah. It's a little dangerous.
I agree.
No, check in with your spouse. Like, give priority to that relationship.
Yeah. It's just send a quick text, just sometimes it can be done pretty quickly.
So, everybody's going to be unhappy with the change that has to take place, but you can at least check in with one another and make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, number 6. This is for step-parents. If you're feeling stepchild rejection and then turning that on your spouse, that is a really dangerous thing that becomes a marital issue really quickly.
Yeah, our rejection is our rejection. It's not somebody else's fault.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sort of blame your spouse. Your child is doing this and this, and they won't let me, or whatever, however they're treating me, as if that is your spouse's fault.
Right.
Every child has agency. They get to make their own choices. They have their own preferences about things. And I'm not saying that the biological parent hasn't had some influence in the past or even in the present, but just be careful of making that leap.
And the other thing that helped me in this situation was to have some other stepmom friends who I could talk to, because sometimes if I talked to Randy about it, maybe he couldn't see my perspective as well. And I don't know, that's where these small groups that we talk about all the time and having other step family couples that you see do life together can make such a difference.
Gayla, let me just share a few thoughts about rejection, and then I'd love for you to just react to them. Some of these thoughts come from the book Building Love Together in Blended Families. In that book, Gary Chapman and I talk about how I think a lot of step-parents feel like they're being rejected when really it's not rejection. For some stepchildren, especially in the beginning seasons of the crock pot, it's more of an awkwardness or confusion. Awkwardness, I'm just not sure how to be around you, not sure how to show affection, not sure how much I trust myself to you. Just there's questions there. So there's an awkwardness. Confusion is, I like you, but, it kind of makes me feel bad for my biological dad if I like you, stepdad. And so there's this sort of inner debate going on for some kids. And that looks like rejection. I don't give you the time of day.
Feels like rejection.
Don't come in my bedroom. You're not welcome here. Those sorts of messages. It's probably not rejection, but if you in your heart label it as such, well, it basically has become that. Now you're responding as if that's rejection, and you probably turn away or withdraw.
Yeah, here's the other thing I want to say. Sometimes it's just teenagers being teenagers, acting like teenagers.
Yes,
and
attitude.
I find that people who marry someone who has a child older than they do, or maybe they don't have kids at all, and so they don't recognize these developmental phases that kids are going through, and they more easily take it as rejection sometimes instead of just realizing, oh, this is just what happens at this age.
Yeah, exactly. Now I do think sometimes it is rejection.
It can be. I agree. Absolutely.
And at that point you sort of ask a question. What's this about? What's under the surface here for this child? What are they concerned about, hurt about, and struggling with? Some of that may have nothing to do with you as the step-parent, but may have everything to do with their past or just some loyalty issues going on with their parent in the other home or whatever it might be. So try to step back from the rejection a bit.
Right.
Analyze it, look at it, talk to your spouse. What do you think it is?
Right.
If it's something you did, well, repair that.
Yeah, and I've heard you say as a step parent, you can't have rough edges.
Yeah.
You really have to be the one who has to go the extra mile.
It is so unfortunate.
It is. But I will say that's in the beginning when you're building those relationships. I mean, my stepkids now know me for who I am, rough edges and all, and they still love me.
Yeah, the analogy I've often used is if you had a new coworker walk into the office today, and all of a sudden you just started hammering them, barking at them like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? You don't use that. Don't sit in this space. That was a dumb question. Why are you even in this meeting? How long is it going to take for them to not want to be around you?
Right.
They don't know you from Adam or Eve. And so your harshness proves you untrustworthy. And so they're going to back up from you. Same thing's true in family relationships. If you're a little rough around the edges early on, then now they've backed up and you've got to try to repair that.
Exactly.
You got to show them you're somebody different. So if it is about you, then apologize. Own it. And try to begin to repair.
Because it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may be a long road. We talk about leading with love always for step parents. In that case, you're really going to have to lead with love.
Right.
Which means loving them in ways that you don't feel like they've deserved or, just showing yourself to be a different kind of person than what they think you are, or what you were at one point in time, and slowly but surely trying to rebuild the relationship.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it happens that you might have a stepchild that you just have a hard time connecting with. You just don't have a lot in common, and it takes a little longer. You might feel rejected more often, and it might be true rejection.
Yeah.
But you keep pursuing anyway, and keep praying for their heart that they would accept you as their step-parent.
Wow, this has been a good conversation. I appreciate you being here. What we want you, the listener, to know is that one way to protect your marital us is by being a good parental team.
Absolutely.
And when you find these little hiccups, potholes, maybe they're big potholes, maybe you've blown a tire, regroup and talk and listen and try to come together as husband and wife, as a parenting unit, because that then can help to open the door for your marriage to begin to repair as well.
And also, Ron, I want to add, if you find yourself in cycles and you just can't get out of them, you might need professional help. I mean, because some stepfamily struggles go deep, and they need some professional help to heal.
That's so true. So true. And I'll just mention, since you brought that up, that we have a network now.
Yes.
I keep it at smartstepfamilies.com. You can go and click Find a Counselor, and we're developing a list of therapists that have gone through continuing training with me and have shown themselves to be people who want to handle blended families well.
Right.
And so there are coaches, there's counselors scattered around the country. We have a few international listings at this point, and that number will continue to grow as we do training.
And I bet some of them are via Zoom even.
Yes, some can work by extension. Most people need to understand, if you're a professional counselor, you can't cross state lines because you're not licensed in that state. You're licensed in this state. So if you're within Texas, for example, anybody who does virtual work within Texas can work with you. So it's not always just in your city.
Right.
There's some good options there.
Yeah.
Well, Gayla, thanks for being with me again.
Yeah, good to be here.
Next, Women in Blended Families.
So we have a variety of things coming up in the fall. One I'm really excited about is Jan Silvius. I don't know those who are familiar with her. She was a speaker for Women of Faith for many years. She wrote a book called Big Girls Don't Whine that I absolutely love.
Big Girls Don't Whine.
Yes.
That's
and
good.
We are going to talk about that.
So good. Women in Blended Families is on Facebook. It's on Instagram. It's on YouTube. And if you can't catch it live when it happens, that's okay. Go back and watch it later. It is always available.
Right.
To learn more about parenting, step-parenting, and your marriage, we have a lot of resources that dig deep into that subject. Gayla's book, Step Parenting with Grace, By the way, what's the update on that book?
Yeah, so an updated version of that book, it's going to be titled Beautifully Blended, has additional devotions, has topics that could be used as a small group study. So that'll come out in 2025.
Hey, so excited about that. I've got books, The Smart Step Family, Building Love Together in Blended Families. Those come to mind. Plus, the number one viewed video series on step family living, The Smart Step Family, is designed for small groups. Again, speaks to a lot of these parenting matters and marriage matters as well. It's also useful for individual couples who just want to watch it online. And it's available for free on Right Now Media. Check the show notes for links about how you can get access to that. Don't forget to leave us a review or a rating. That'll help somebody else find us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that on your podcast app or on YouTube if you'd rather watch us. There's still time for you to join Gayla and I and leaders from around the country at the next summit on Step Family Ministry. This is how your church impacts your corner of the world and lowers the re-divorce rate. So join us October 10 and 11, 2024 in Dallas. Check the show notes for links to all of that. I'm Ron Deal. Thanks for listening or watching. And thank you to our production team and donors who make this podcast possible. Family Life Blended is part of the Family Life Podcast Network, helping you pursue the relationships that matter most.